This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Big or small, it's the place to be for all your website building needs. So I watched the new Star Wars show and I kinda hate it. See, The Bad Batch isn't what you would call a terrible show. It doesn't hit the lows of Rebels, but it doesn't hit any of the highs of the Clone Wars, even compared to the first season, the bad season. It only really holds up to lower tier to mid episodes. It has a great production value, but that doesn't cover up for the fact that it is painfully average. But with every episode, I start to like it less and less. I don't know, something about it just rubbed me the wrong way. And by the end of season 1, I realized I'd rather watch Ezra than these guys. Look, I really wanted to like this show. I didn't think it needed to exist, but you offer me more Clone Wars, I am going to jump on it, even if it would just be about the clones. But my big issue is, the clones suck. The characters are the blandest tropes imaginable, and it feels like G.I. Joe in space. I feel this is meant to be for younger audiences, but then got wrapped up being a continuation of the Clone Wars. But then it has random dark moments with actual war crimes going on that makes me think that no, this is supposed to be a continuation. And it's those elements, among many others, that make me just, it makes me hate it. I really didn't want this to be the case, but it is. But before we get into that, let me just take a moment to talk about the things that I sponsorships. Yeah, sorry fellas. Squarespace is one of the top website building sites in the world. Need a template? They got you. Screw up and change the font to Gaster, one quick button, and you're done. Buy the actual domain? They got you covered. Squarespace was built for everyone's needs in mind, with hundreds of website templates to choose from portfolio to shops. If you need it, they not only have it, but have made it easy. With an intuitive user interface, you can breeze past the learning curve and make your ideas reality. Though sometimes less is more. Host videos from YouTube and Vimeo, fulfill orders with no in between, Squarespace has got it all. And with the link in the description or promo code SarcasticChorus, it can be yours. Try out Squarespace for 14 days free and 10% off your first purchase. And as a longtime user, I can say that it's worth the price and worth a try. And it's one of the only things that have allowed me to keep myself sane when building my own website. But for now, let's get back to the video, talk about the Dad Batch. So the Bad Batch is about a group of experimental renegade clones who lived through Order 66 and are now on the run, as they can only watch the Republic Tokyo drift into becoming the Empire. Continuing the story of the Clone Wars, this animated, no, that's too strong a word, DLC was created much like The Mandalorian to serve as a bridge between the respective trilogies. And as a longtime Star Wars fanatic, I had zero interest in watching this. The Siege of Mandalore was perfect, and this final shot was the perfect conclusion to the tragedy that was all the characters involved. All the ones that we had come to know and love over the course of the series. But sadly, Disney, in the quest for more money, decided they needed more Star Wars. But the sequel trilogy is tainted, no one gives a shit about the High Republic, so ding ding ding, we're getting a show about the rise of the Empire. And we can only watch as they suck out the last ounce of Clone Wars nostalgia while also double dipping into Rebels. Because the more you're thinking about those other shows you like, the less you have to try when you're watching this one. And while no one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans, this was a show that broke the Banthas back for me. And I am out of patience. Before I start ranting, let me just go over the positives, because I like to be nice sometimes. Now, first off, I just want to say that this show looks great. From the textures to the environments, this is an upgrade from the original Clone Wars in every regard. That's kind of be expected, because this technology just gets better and better as the years go on, provided that the studio gives them the time and money to do it. And I'd even go so far as to say that this show can look cinematic at times. But these moments come rarely, and the average episode isn't like that. But when it does, it fucking hits. And I actually look up from my phone for a change. And I have to say this one, but major props to D. Bradley Baker, aka the voice of Appa, and all the clones in this show. This man is literally the entire main cast, and he is doing everything he can to make this work, especially since the writing is doing him no favors. Also, I like the soundtrack, and that one cameo. Just the one. And that's it. All right. Let's do this.
Separated due to a fundamental difference in ideology.
That's cute. You thinking I care.
You can't talk about this show without talking about the characters, as they are emblematic of every problem that this show has. This team of clones we are saddled with as main characters don't work. And that is shocking, because Clone Wars was able to make every clone feel like an individual. We had entire arcs that just followed them. But here, Despite being upgraded to the main stars and getting comparatively more time with them, they are somehow severely underwritten, existing as tropes, nothing more, with zero, and I mean this, zero chemistry between them or any type of character development. This show doesn't give us any reason to like these guys outside of being the Dad Batch. Heavy had more character development in one episode than Hunter did in the entire first season. And the fact that this is primarily, first and foremost, an action-adventure show is no excuse for these characters to be as boring as they are. And it all comes down to the characters. They exemplify every issue that this story has, so we're just gonna go through all of them and figure out what doesn't work here. So let's start with the first one, shall we? Wrecker.
Well, who collects the bounty?
Oh, look, it talks.
He's the dumb strong guy. He likes to punch things, explosions, and popcorn. And personally, I love the big strong guy trope. Show me an idiot with a bombastic personality who fights, and I'll watch their shtick for days. Wrecker is just frustrating because he is written to just be an actual child. There's a difference between making a character simple and writing them to have a mental deficiency, to help define them besides their physical strength. But Wrecker gets none of that. He's written to be the second child of the group so that Omega has a friend to hang out with. He's just stupid and strong, which tears towards Hodor levels of bad, which is a trope that I've never liked and I want it to die. He isn't used in any interesting ways. His entire skill set is punch and blow shit up. If they used him more creative ways, if they used him more variety, I could see him working in some capacity. But he, like the rest of the cast, for a supposedly elite task force, they're actually boring to watch. There's not a fourth thing about Wrecker. He exists entirely to be an action figure. And while I do think Wrecker and Omega being best friends is adorable, it doesn't save the fact that he's boring. And you can predict everything about him. I would rank him as the worst of the Bad Batch, but at least I can remember that he exists. Which great, now I have to go pick on a nerdy kid.
It's over.
Just like I said.
It is just like you said.
Tech might as well be a droid. He hacks things and does tech support. He's the resident smart guy, barely doing anything, and I continually forget his name. He is just a trope, and they play it to the T. He can be a little sassy sometimes, but that's not breaking any new ground. Tech has the funny signs in the show, but they're all one-liners. There's no real banter between him and the rest of the characters that lets me really help appreciate him more, appreciate what he brings to the team. His only other gimmick is that he'll know things ahead of time and not mention it. He knew the inhibitor chips and said nothing. This could be a source of conflict, that he withholds information that the team needs to know, but there's nothing. None of these ideas are ever expanded upon. No traits are ever given any extra context. Tech is nothing. I can't even be mad at him because he's just a construct of perfectly average writing with funny quips, exposition, and glasses. He barely exists on this team, but at least I can be very annoyed at the next one.
Fine, but not at that price. I am worth more than 2,000. Right.
You guys remember Echo? Appeared in the first season of the Clone Wars, served alongside a group of cadets. We followed his journey as he grew from a manual reading bookworm to a competent veteran, how he supposedly died only to get brought back 5 years later as a cyborg by the Separatists. Like, I was okay to see him alive, I kind of forgot that he existed, but after watching The Bad Batch, I kinda wish he stayed dead. His Echo is every problem I have with the Bad Batch wrapped into a single, underutilized character. You'd think after giving up his life for the Republic, being brought back as a tool by the Separatists, only to watch the Empire throw away the clones, you kinda expect him to, I don't know, have an opinion on anything. We get snippets, only snippets of Echo not really liking the direction that Bad Batch is taking, holding himself to a higher standard as a soldier, and that it might be their duty to fight against the Empire, or they might hold resentment against the Separatists, only for that idea to be one line and it's never brought up again. Echo doesn't talk about anything. He is just here to be the replacement for R2, going on wacky droid adventures where he pretends to be a droid and unionizes them, sticks his arm into things, stick his arms into other things. Talk about how great friends he is with Rex. If there was any character that should have had a shred of introspection in the show, it's Echo. He's watched all of his friends die, he was treated as a product by both sides of the conflict, got turned into a fucking cyborg. At some point, the man would have to ask how he got here, how much he's lost, and what's the point of it all? What was the point of that massive war I fought through, only for have the people that created me to put in a kill switch to kill the Jedi? The show's concept begs to have these questions asked, only for them to all to be ignored. To focus on basic things like, why are there no more clones? The least interesting of questions. We do have instances where we see clones fight against programming to say that I don't believe in this, but then it just ends. I think we have 2 decent episodes on Ryloth where we start to ask questions of what happens to these other worlds after the Republic. I feel like you can have space adventures while still carrying these questions. Instead of aggressively teasing these ideas, you can go whole hog. Having fun in action and doing creative stuff are not mutually exclusive, but instead, we just get the A-team in space. That doesn't do anything meaningful that might interfere with canon or do anything that might reward longtime viewers outside of a barrage of references. This show didn't need to exist. People said the same thing about Clone Wars, but then it got good and showed everyone what a show like this was capable of, taking elements and characters from a convoluted mess of a trilogy and making them compelling. Bad Batch hasn't done that for me. It doesn't work as a placeholder for Clone Wars because I can rewatch that. And having Echo here just makes him feel like a shell of what he once was. Clones in the original were able to be their own people in spite of being so similar. Here, we have a bunch of clones with these exaggerated character traits, and they should have some of the more interesting personalities. Cranking that one stat to 11 for all of them just made them predictable. It didn't give us anything that we really wanted. It created interesting designs, but that's about it. And having Echo here with all the Bad Batch who are all so exaggerated, it kind of forces all the nuance out of Echo's character and makes him just the regular clone of the cast. Echo doesn't feel like his original self, and the only thing that tells me that he is his connection with Rex, who's the only person he seems to have a genuine connection with. But he can't go hang out with Rex because he's not in Rebels. He doesn't really have a place to go with the rest of the clones, and he doesn't have any chemistry with the rest of the cast. Which yeah, this is the thing with this show. It is my biggest complaint, and that is the main team has no chemistry. And this is a tough thing to criticize because this is all really one guy talking to himself. But it really bugs me. For a clone TMNT, they have been on all these crazy adventures and all the other clones don't respect them. For them to have each other and for them to be just a squad is the death of this show. I can handle a goofy show about clones having fun adventures, but if I don't like watching these people hang out with each other, I have no reason to care. Everyone is a stock trope with little to say. You could have AI write these lines. People talk, bland banter, Omega does something, then we start blasting and the episode ends. The reason we like TMNT, Avatar, and fuck, even Voltron, is that we like the characters and we like being around them. We like seeing them interact with each other, even when they're being assholes. There's nothing really to latch onto with the Bad Batch. They're basically just assigning tasks the entire time, and they get along like co-workers, just getting a job done. And every time they bring in Crosshair to make him talk about what great friends or brothers they have, that's the only time I believe that there's anything meaningful between them. When they tell me that they have a connection. Like, I was never in love with them in general when they were first introduced. I was like, wow, this is neat. Alright, I don't have to see them ever again. But even those 3 episodes, the Bad Batch are more interesting than anything they do here with Omega. And the main reason is Crosshair. Now, Crosshair isn't a great character, but he brought something that this team needs desperately. Conflict. He was the team lancer, the asshole. He was the guy to tell others that they suck and we need to do things differently. And when the team loses him, everyone else is just happy to go along with whatever Hunter or Tech comes up with. It's boring. It deprives us of the banter, the showing off, the power struggle over who knows what's best. Obi-Wan and Anakin were constantly bickering over what the best way to handle a situation was. It highlighted who they are as people and how they did things. Obi-Wan was all about taking things slow and being careful, while Anakin was a bit more brash and made shit up as they went along. And through all their shit, they complement each other. Here, they're a squad, nothing else. They have different skill sets, but everything they do is this bland Bad Batch way. There are no individuals on this team, with the bare minimum writing put in to make them sound just a little bit different. I think that's why I like Crosshair the most, is he's not with everyone else. He has to be more of his own character and not fall into the dumb asshole with the rest of his unit. Every clone in the original series was the same but different. Here the clones are all different, but they're all the same, and it really makes me wish that the show wasn't about clones, because then at least we get multiple actors who would have their chance to put their own crazy spin on things, rather than one man having to carry most of the work on his own. And holy shit, I'm only halfway through these people. Alright, next up is this Rambo-looking motherfucker. And while all the other clones got physically changed to enhance their one ability, Hunter was altered to stay pretty because he has a special trait of being the protagonist. He's a team leader, he's the one whose relationship with Omega changed the most, and the only one Crosshair really seems to have beef with because everyone else doesn't have any room in their character bio for angry rival. Being the ace of the team, Hunter suffers from main guy syndrome. He's responsible, sensible, even emotional at times, but always does the right thing. He is your standard hero with not much going on. He is the Team Leonardo, no one's favorite Ninja Turtle. And just like Leo, the most interesting part of his character was his rivalry with his Lancer. But at this point, it doesn't look like Crosshair will be rejoining the team, which is fine. Being the strong, responsible team leader that he is, Hunter's job is to figure out what his squad will do to survive, and telling Omega to stay on the ship. She doesn't. The pressure of being responsible for your brothers and aunt should be stressful. It should be filled with hard decisions. But as soon as they get to their whole bounty hunting gig down, the world feels like it's on easy mode. Because this is an adventure game, not a survival one. Need a place to stay? They got a place to stay. Letting roll on fuel? They find fuel. Need a job? Lizard Girl Boss has got you covered. Owe her money? Don't worry, Omega paid it off hustling people at chess. Bad Batch has the same problem as Rebels, where despite being wanted, they can pretty much do anything and never worry about the Empire finding them. There's no problem that can't be solved by the end of the episode. Bad Batch is just an action show, so this shouldn't be a problem. But why then? Why do they keep bringing up the logistics of space travel? Why do they keep bringing up moral ambiguity and questions that we want to get answered if they don't commit to them? They keep talking about this isn't the life they wanted. Then they stop, do a mission, and stop talking about it. They ask themselves, should they go help Rex? Of course. The answer is yes, because nothing they do here is fun enough to justify the millions of dollars being spent on each episode. This show's status quo creates side quests. They have the quest giver as their best friend and landlord, setting up the wacky adventures and little else. And this all leads to Hunter, the guy who's the team leader, a title that means nothing when the team is on the rails and he really doesn't need to show leadership. So outside when Crosshair gets involved, there's no surprises and my interest dies with every episode. And I wish the show was just about Cad Bane, because he actually isn't bad. But at no point do you ever think that they'll kill a character, and there's not enough side characters getting killed to create the illusion that there is a chance. The show is the Dad Batch with war crimes, and Omega is the main character. Yep, we're gonna talk about this girl.
Hello.
Fuck you say to me, you little shit!
Omega has had the Dax stacked against her pretty high, for obvious reasons, and I know I didn't care for her in this first season, despite being a gender-bent Boba Fett. She pretty much exists just so that we can have that child character for the younger audiences. But she's also the only one with a shred of personality that isn't defined by TV tropes. Her character isn't great, but it's the only one with a pulse. And there is a nice through line in watching her develop combat skills and gain a greater knowledge about the galaxy. And if Omega weren't in the show, I don't think the story would be fixed. Because if they wanted to explore the other characters, they would have at this point. Because they never get any storylines focusing on them. We never see them grow or learn anything. They accomplish objectives. That's it. This show had 3 phases: the running away bit, the doing side quest, and Kamino getting nuked. And I'm being generous with that last one. The writing is so focused on the events that all the character building seems to fall on Omega, making her feel like an obligation. Omega learns something, Dad Batch steals drugs. Omega learns how to gamble, Dad Batch rescues a separatist. All this focus on Omega drives about half the plot, but only Hunter is getting anything out of this. She's not the problem, she's just a symptom of the show's disinterest in doing anything other than space adventures and teasing greater storylines. They probably would have made the show about a gang of random space mercenaries, but then made them clones to guarantee people would actually watch it. And when anyone starts to question why it's not doing anything with the clone element, it makes another fucking reference. Like, there are so many references in this show, it actively makes me not want to watch other Star Wars shows. Like, I get it. We live in a post-Chewie Got a Middle world, but Disney literally can't keep their hands to themselves. They've gone beyond making references and just making canonical details the point. Shoehorning in information that changes nothing, or making standalone stories into origins for the most redundant pieces of Star Wars lore. Like in one episode, the Bad Batch are told to retrieve a person, because Black Ops might as well, only to find out that they've been taken by Zygerian slavers, the cat people Anakin was flirting with. Which fine, yeah, slavers, makes sense. Hey, it's even nice to see them. But in the middle of the whole operation, we get the fake out, where this slave kid isn't the person they're looking for, it's the baby Rancor, that they don't even have to work together to subdue or come up with some crazy plan to get on their side. Wrecker just has to have a fist fight with it till they fall asleep, because basic action adventure show. Oh, and that Rancor? Never would have guessed. It's from Return of the Jedi. Why did you give this to us, Disney? I need to know. Are we supposed to feel bad now for the monster? Or was us remembering the whole point? The show does this constantly, and it makes episodes themselves feel pointless. One of the best things about Clone Wars was that, for the exception of established characters, we don't know what was going to happen to everyone else. Clones died, Jedis died. There's enough uncertainty in the world to maintain the tension, but despite us dealing with characters whose fates we don't know, anything can happen to the Bad Batch. But it never feels like that. It always feels like they're safe and are gonna make it through this. And the fact that they constantly bring them in with other canonical characters only makes me less interested. I don't think they should have brought in Rex this early into the show. Rex just becomes another side quest giver that as soon as they're with him, I'm like, okay, everything has to be fine because Rex is here and he's in Rebels. If they just did more standalone where we just were doing completely new things, it would lose that element of predictability. We would stop being able to know where the story was going. It would make the show feel less safe. And that is a huge problem with this show because it is so safe. It is so easy. It is almost menacingly banal. Even when Bad Batch is breaking into this secret underground Imperial base, filled to the brim with stormtroopers who can't do anything, all the tension in the show just goes out the window when we find out that the person that they're rescuing is one of Rex's fishing buddies from Rebels. Omega gets hunted by a bounty hunter. It's the sniper from The Mandalorian. We even get the Pointless Sisters and Hera's entire origin story. The show exists between trilogies and could have been a chance for us to experience the galaxy falling under the Empire, the seeds of rebellion flaring up, or even just watching the clones deal with raising Omega. But in cramming everything onto one plate and never touching any of it, we just end up getting a banal show that does nothing. It's a kid's show, but then it'll turn around and do war crimes. And I don't know how it wants me to feel about that. There are ways to do fan service without intruding on the story or being obnoxious. The scene with the Tusken Raiders and Mandalorian is an example of this done well, incorporating a known but underexplored element and making us see them in a new light. Adding characterization that the Raiders aren't just villains that raise their stick in the air, they have their own culture and a sense of honor, and a reason to be hostile to all the settlers. But what we get here is just a reference for its own sake, touching upon real interesting issues only to immediately ignore it so they can pull a solo, adding details but no substance. We already know what happened to Hera in Rebels, but us watching her dad and mom get screwed over by the Empire over a false assassination attempt doesn't tell us anything new about Hera. It just adds details. Like, it's started with an interesting story about her family's struggles, with her dad working with the Empire trying to demilitarize and disarm the former freedom fighters, with her dad desperately trying to make this work and just being so tired of war. So he trusts the Empire more than he should, but then he also has to deal with his brother, who wants to hoard more weapons so they can fight in case things go south. Then all the ambiguity and intrigue gets thrown out the window so that we can immediately hop to Hera's origin story. It can't do anything in pieces, it needs to do everything immediately. And that instant gratification weakens these plot points so much. Because if it isn't just okay action scenes, the rest of the story is speedrunning, so we can have something recognizably Empire, which this show suffers from a lot. This show so badly wants to make things A New Hope that the Republic turning to the Empire phase of the story feels already done. The Empire is already the Empire in a matter of months. Fuck that, it may have been weeks. The Empire has replaced the clones with stormtroopers, changed the currency, given new passports, and are now hunting resistance fighters and being run by slimy generals. And I kind of expected this. Slow world building like that, yeah, you're kind of asking for a bit too much. And the need to make things recognizable just trumps everything. But I think that clear leap for a bad guy and good guy dynamic killed the story for me. Because we got rid of Tarkin immediately and just get some generic evil guy who's just being evil because Imperial. This is just dumb fan ideas at this point, but I feel like it would have been really cool to have a character arc where we have a hero turn into a villain. Have that symbolism of the Republic fully transitioning and people just accepting that this is the new status quo. Maybe have a character grow more and more apathetic after fighting the heroes, becoming so focused on order that they lose sight of their original goal. What if Admiral Yularen was the bad guy? For those who don't know, that's a general with the narrator's voice. He served along with Anakin and Obi-Wan. He even spoke up for Ahsoka and helped her become a leader. I mean, we already know that he stays in the Empire because he's in a A New Hope and Rebels. And because we never get that headspace of clones slowly learning to reject the Empire, they immediately get that run away or die motive. It'd be great to have a good guy have an arc where we slowly watch this uptight but kind leader harden into someone who would approve of the Death Star. That would give us a point. We would get to see that last remnant of the Republic die and be replaced by the evil of the Empire. Instead, we got Order 66, food fight, murder women and children. The Republic was never all good, but skipping that transition cut the connection to Clone Wars. It made the show a series of 6 out of 10 episodes that only exist to make you want to rewatch other things. This show is a series of 5 out of 10 episodes that only exist to make you rewatch other things. Like, this show could have been great, it could have been good, but nothing in the first season has convinced me that this isn't anything more than a second monitor show. Something you have in the background while you do other things. If they get their act together in the next season, I'll be happy, but as it stands, I don't see myself rewatching it, because this is Disney's worst habits wrapped into one bland but pretty show. So you can save your breath on this one. Based on the lack of talk, I think most of you already have.